All right, and welcome back to another episode of the Movie Pope. I'm Lucas Suon.
And I'm Lee Suchek, and we're here to talk about the damn Flash.
So, what was interesting was that last week, you and I and a couple of friends we went to Heroes Con, and as we were driving, you were describing everything to me from the movie, and at first I was like, "What is he going on about?" Because I figured with a DC movie, I mean, you're not going to expect. I mean, you're not going to expect, quality movie making. But that Monday I went to go see it and I was like, okay, this is a lot worse than what he was letting on. So do you want to just dive in and just point out a few things that kind of stood out to you in that
Yeah,
movie?
absolutely. But I gotta say this right now. You're saying it's a lot worse. I'm very curious now to hear your thoughts about this.
I
Because
I was literally making mental notes the entire time. And as soon as I got back, I just sat there and wrote down everything that I thought was weird. And I sent you a text saying I was watching Justice League. I had to watch the Snyder cut to decompress. Like like when you have to watch the Snyder cut to feel better about yourself, that says a lot, really.
yes, I agree. Um, yeah, like you want to talk about the opening sequence, because I feel like you can't really like get into it without talking about the opening. So,
I
um,
mean, was that even necessary? Like, do I care about that girl who has his breakfast ready right then and there? Like, was that even supposed to be humor? Like, I
I
really
don't.
don't get it.
I didn't get it. I was kind of like sitting there like, like the Flash being late for stuff. I don't know if that's supposed to be the joke. It's like, oh, ha ha ha, like the Flash, how can he be late for anything? He literally can, travel the world in a second. So I didn't understand what they're looking for, and I just it was just odd to me. Like I get that you see a lot of these like kind of cold openings where they just wanted to like try to show you some action or get like a sequence in right off the bat. But like the whole thing just felt weird. Like I didn't need to see him start off like trying to order a sandwich, and it all just kind of set the tone, I think, for how the movie was gonna go.
Oh my god,
Um,
the barista. I was like, I know I shouldn't be this in punch that barista. Like the first comment he makes is about, oh wow, all that in a sandwich. You must have, that's a pretty high calorie diet. And I'm like, really, dude? You say that to a customer? I should reach over the counter and smack you silly. And then he goes on about, oh yeah, I don't know if he was talking about his sister or what. It was a family member. He was going about a family member, and he's just sitting there making it. I'm like, do you do this to everybody? And then the second thing I'm asking is, why do they put that in there? I know sometimes I have to put in like filler just to like pad out the movie, but I mean, if anything, this would be more appropriate to a Hulk movie than it would be to a Flash movie. Because
mhm.
then you're just expecting him to turn around and see like a big green guy, and I'm like, oh yeah, never mind.
Yeah, I was wondering because like they kind of like brought up like when they're doing the hospital sequence, right? The baby shower sequence that I
Literally a
really
baby shower, by the way.
yes. Yes, I do have to. Whoever came up with that, kudos to you, because I that's funny as hell. So like, because like they kind of have like the whole like calorie, he's got like the little calorie monitor on him, and I guess like when he's like really hungry, it causes him not to be able to like use the Speed Force as well. And I was like,
That I did not understand one bit because I looked at it at first. I'm like, so is he just monitoring his energy levels? I didn't realize I was monitoring his calories.
okay, I might be mistaken with that. I thought it was like I think it said calorie level on it, but maybe I'm mistaken. I don't remember, but I think it said like calorie level on it, which once again just kind of goes back to the purpose. Like if the Flash can't be the Flash because he can't eat, like it's just that the whole opening sequence to me just made it that much dumber because it's like okay, so like literally you're creating this kind of like narrative that he needs to eat something, and because he's not able to eat something, we have this humorous, and I'm putting air quotes around that humorous sequence when he has to eat out of the vending machine, when all the babies are falling out of the hospital room. So,
well, that brings up another point too, because like you have all these babies falling, and there's like and they made it pretty clear there are a lot of dangerous instruments flying around that could kill a baby right then and there.
yeah,
His
I
first,
can't believe
his
the
first,
hospital's not been sued so far, because like literally it seems like the maternity ward there is like literally a death trap for kids.
well, not well. I mean, well, we can get back to that in a second. But the other thing that struck me was the fact that all of these dangerous instruments are flying. The ground is giving way. People will potentially get crushed. Well, CGI babies will get crushed. His first instinct is to run to the vending machine, grab a bunch of snacks, and then he has time to microwave, a burrito and eat it. And then he's like, "Oh, now I'm good. Now I can go and save all these people." I'm like, "Are you fucking serious right now?" That's your first priority. It's like, no, no, it's not to grab all these people and save them. No, my first priority is to grab a bunch of snacks from the vending machine. Oh, and there just happens to be this burrito. I'm gonna go ahead and microwave it because I'm really
Well,
hungry.
he can't use. I mean, I get why they did that though. That's because like if he doesn't have food, he can't use the Speed Force. So I get like it was placed in there to do that. But for me, the problem was it doesn't really come up again during the film. So it was kind of like, okay,
So that's a small blessing right there. So
yes, no, I agree. It should never have come up in the film at all, which would have been nicer, because it's like, okay, we referenced that once, and it's to create, kind of this, oh no, like, this ticking clock narrative with the Flash of all people. We're trying to create this ticking clock narrative that, oh, the babies are falling, and he's hungry, so he's not going to be able to run around as fast. And I'm like, oh, this is so weird of a way to open up a movie about the Flash.
I mean, I was just thinking too, because how they like to go and emphasize, but especially with DC, every hero has a weakness. Apparently, the Flash's weakness is food. So if you take food away from him, he can't do anything. It's like, hey, you want these bag of Doritos? You can't have it. You can't have it.
Yeah, I mean, out of all the weaknesses for all the characters, the Flash's being hunger is a very odd one. So,
and his choices are equally odd, but that's neither here nor there. I just want to get this off my chest. Why the hell would you put a baby in a microwave?
you know what? I guess he felt like it was the safest place as any. I don't. Your guess is as good as mine. I mean, I guess props for improvisation when it comes to that. I mean, I guess the whole thing was like, oh, why would you put a baby in a microwave? I guess that's supposed to be like funny. And I was just like,
that's
I'm
very dark. That's very dark humor. If that's
yes, it is. Yes, it is very dark humor, like you said. So, it doesn't help that all the babies look so fake. I don't have any base. I have no investment with it. I'm just like, oh, okay, cool. I can't wait for him to put this weird baby-like figure into a microwave, and I don't get why. Like, I think the director said like he created some type of like it was like an artistic decision to create things like that, and I really think that was code for they had no money or they didn't have time to get the sequence right, and they just kind of delivered whatever, because I don't understand what creative decision you're going for to make the babies look as fake as they looked.
Because I remember that was the point you made last Saturday about how the visual effects were just so subpar. It was like,
oh man, yeah.
I mean, either the person was an amateur or the guy was like, yeah, fuck it. I mean, they're not giving me enough money anyway. I'm just gonna create that, just stick it to them, whatever.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, like, even as we go, like, after that sequence, and, like, we're, following Ben Affleck's Batman, which I guess we have to specify which one we follow, because there's going to be a lot of that happening in this movie. Like, we're following him, like, I couldn't stop looking at the CGI. And it was so distracting because it's like, it was so obvious that like when his cape is kind of like fluttering in the background, it
Yeah.
looks totally fake. Like I just can't unsee it. It's like, don't draw emphasis to it, or just like kind of have it dangling there. Like I just don't know what they're going for. And
I mean,
then,
it takes you out of the story, really, because
yes, yeah, absolutely.
because if you have all these visual miscues, I mean, naturally, people are going to be drawn to those visual miscues, and then you're when you get back, you're gonna be like, well, what the hell just happened here?
Yeah, exactly. And I think there was like one part when he's on the bridge, right near the end of the chase sequence, like he's on a bridge, and it looks like literally like a PlayStation 4 cutscene. Like it doesn't even look like I'm watching a multi-$100 million movie
Yeah.
that's making things look like it was done on like a past gen gaming console. Like it was just sad. Like I was like, I can't believe I'm watching this. It looks
I mean,
like Batman is surfing on the highway, and it just looked it looked so fake the whole time.
I mean, you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of those old Call of Duties that we they used to come out back when we were in middle school and high school. That's what it looked like to me, and I was just thinking, and I was just thinking, well, if you can't render it correctly, why even have it at all?
Yeah, like maybe change up that sequence. Like there's a lot of ways you could do that without making it look terribly fake. Like maybe don't have Batman being dragged around like Indiana Jones behind the truck with the grappling hook, and it just does not work at all.
I mean, let's not gloss over it. Like, I mean, even if you're wearing a bat suit, you are gonna look like shit when you come out. Like,
yep.
I mean, there's no way you're gonna I mean, if by the slimmest of chance you survive that, you are going to look like someone in a boxing match who has been beaten to a bloody pulp.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And really, the suit is the only thing keeping everything together. Because if you take that thing off, you will literally fall apart. But that's neither here nor there. I will say this: like the banter between Barry and Alfred. I thought that was a pretty good moment, just because, just because Jeremy Irons, I felt was for me the highlight of that scene, because because of that banter, because Alfred always has like this dry, sarcastic English wit that he's known for, and I thought, you know what, that's the only thing I like about that scene. Never mind the fact that the hospital exploded. And can I just say, it was pretty weird for the villains to just decide, we're gonna blow up this hospital. We've gotten what we wanted. Let's just blow it up because we're assholes. I mean,
You know what? Full disclosure, one, I don't even remember. Like, I don't remember if that was actually a part of it. I guess like I was already so taken out of the movie after the first 5 minutes. I don't remember that, nor do I even remember the banter that he had with Alfred. That's how much I remember.
That's what Alfred said. Alfred said, yeah, Falcone's kid, when he took the virus or whatever it was they stole, they set off explosives underneath the hospital to help in their getaway. And I'm like,
oh man.
And I'm like, okay, that's pretty stupid. I mean, yeah, I mean, I was trying. You can probably imagine me sitting there leaning forward, trying hard to, trying my damnedest to pay attention. I'm like, okay, forget the stupid cape, forget the fact that Batman will probably, in real life will probably be killed being dragged behind a giant truck. I was just trying to figure out the people who are writing this. They're really not good at putting things together, because if you're going around stealing things from a hospital, it's not going to be that hard, because people are going to be focused on other things anyway. But again, that's neither here nor there. That's like the main thing I remember from the banter between Barry and Alfred was that. How did you feel about Wonder Woman's appearance at the end?
I mean, just about as useful as her appearance and everything else. Like at the end of Shazam 2, like it was just like, oh cool. I guess she was brought in so then we could have this very funny gag with the lasso truth again, because that was kind of, I guess, a highlight for the Justice League was when Aquaman was sitting on it. I guess they're like, that one worked so well. Let's make sure we do it again in this one for literally the reason to make a joke about Barry being a virgin, which I guess was, once again, like it just, I think the reason it doesn't work is because we've seen it done before. And I think that's kind of overall, and not to get like too outside of us talking about it, but I feel like that's the issue with the movie as a whole, was just like, it's like we're regurgitating things we've seen loads of times. And I think that sequence right there was just like, oh, cool. Like, that's from that other movie. I'm like, really, was that the scene that we wanted to really take apart? We wanted to really introduce that into Flash? Was, the laugh of joke scene from the other movie? Like, come on, like, come up with a new way to have humor other than, creating this other thing. I just, like I said, I get people can enjoy that, and I'm totally fine with that. It just feels to me lazy. Like, there was other ways that we could create jokes without it being, using the same lasso of truth that we saw in a previous installment.
Plus, you think by now they would know about the lasso of truth anyway. So
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So so for me, the next sequence after that, after Barry gets a sandwich and he goes to work, he's basically working at a hipster crime lab when you look at it, because everybody's being catty. It seems like people are more interested in just having a conversation and making catty remarks at each other than actually doing any work. And you've got the stereotypical boss is like, Barry, if you're late and again, it's your ass on the table, blah, blah, blah. And everyone's like, oh, Barry, what was it this time? Did the dog eat your alarm clock or whatever? And I'm like, okay, so again, it's just a continuation of the laziness and the writing approach, because you've already started off on a great foot, and I use great in air quotes, by having Barry and the barista have their banter about, oh, you don't have my sandwich ready. You continue on with the fact that you've got pretty strange banter going on between Barry and Batman, and not to mention the horrible CGI that pretty much took you out of the scene. And now you have this ridiculous attempt at workspace comedy that, again, doesn't really add much to the story. It's just showing us. I mean, is it them trying to emphasize the fact that Barry's life is shit? Is that what I'm supposed to get from that? Am I supposed to feel bad for him because, he's basically the cleanup guy of the Justice League, and now his workplace is full of hipster doofuses who do nothing but make catty remarks at him? Is that it?
I mean, I kind of looked at it was just some other scene. I mean, like, it was what it was. I mean, we've seen, everything. There's gonna be filler in that type of discussion. So I kind of just looked at it like, oh, it's them injecting their humor or trying to help inject some comedy in it, and it just kind of fell flat. It just didn't really resonate with me. So
yeah, I mean, for me, I brought it up because. Because it's just again another attempt at them trying to be funny and them trying to pander to millennials, and damn those millennials and their sarcastic dry wit humor, nudge nudge. I mean, it doesn't work. I mean, it's just one of those scenes that again shouldn't really be there, because it doesn't add anything to the story. And if it's supposed to elicit some sort of sympathy for Barry, it really doesn't, because I already don't have sympathy for him to begin with. So it really is it's just a wasted opportunity, I think. So moving forward, what else stood out to you about that movie?
Yeah, I mean, so I think when we kind of move forward to him going in the past, and him meeting his past self, was, I mean, kind of it was a mixed bag. So I will give the movie some props, or I guess I'll give Ezra Miller some props. I think there were times when him dealing with himself worked, And then there's other times where I couldn't. It was so hard to stomach the scene because of how lame it was. And I think
So it's like
really,
90% of the time right there then.
yeah, it was very largely like that. And I think for me, something that really kind of got under my skin the whole time was like just how much they made the past Barry, how annoying they made him. I just it was so obnoxious, and I get the reason why they want to do it is because I think it kind of creates a better arc for past Barry as like we go in the future, which I will say I think was one of the few highlights of it. But I think it just made him so obnoxious that it just kind of made me not really get as invested into that character that I would really should have been, because it was so annoying. Like it was just like I get he's young and that's what they're going for, but I'm pretty sure he was in college, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Like this happened when he was in college, right?
Yeah, he was 18 years old, so
Yeah, exactly, right. So no offense at all, but I'm pretty sure if I was in college and my future self was chatting with me, I wouldn't act that asinine. Like,
yeah.
there's just no way. Like, it's not very believable from a storytelling perspective when you're trying to convince me that if my past or my future self was telling me to do something, I wouldn't be like that. Like, I totally got so disconnected with the whole storytelling because of that thing. Like, you can't make that character that dumb and airheaded and expect me to have any type of belief in that. Now, granted, yeah, I'd imagine, being 18, you would want to be a little bit more of a show off. And I think it probably would have been interesting if you have like the Flash when he's trying to do something or he tries to save somebody that like they get injured or something happens to them. And he
Yeah.
comes to the realization that him goofing around can really cost people dearly. Like that would have been a lot more interesting to have in it, but they kind of really don't do that through most of it. And to me, it's just like you didn't really make me care about the past Flash. And I think that would have made what happens in the future a lot better if they actually depicted that well.
Yeah, he's not as emotionally invested in that.
Exactly. Yes.
Well,
I'm not.
well, the thing for me is, when I was watching it, I was like, well, this is the laziest way to make, future Barry, look more mature than past Barry. Well, how can we do that? Oh,
That's
let's
very
just
true.
make. Yeah, basically, they took. Someone must have said, "Huh, what are the worst qualities of a teenager? Oh, stupid, oriented on drugs, lazy. Oh, we'll just make that past Barry. To your point. When you're, even when you're that age, there's a level of maturity about you where you're like, yeah, I understand what the stakes are. I'm not that dumb. I feel like they should have highlighted more of his arrogance because
Yes.
because think about it. Like, when you're a teenager, you feel you're indestructible as it is, right? I know when we were that age, we thought we knew everything. We thought we were the shit. So if you amplify that with having the power to access the speed force and move faster than the speed of light, that would magnify your arrogance tenfold. But no, in this
Totally
case,
agreed.
but no, in this case, he gets the speed force power, and what happens? He's still he's still some sort of pothead who's like going around saying, "Oh, Eric Stoltz was in Back to the Future, not Michael J. Fox, dude." I'm like, that totally doesn't make any sense, dude, because because he's not acting like, "Oh, I'm better than you now that I have the power of speed and you don't." He just goes back to acting like a total doofus, and the whole point of a movie is for a movie character is to is to start from one point and sort of develop as you go along. Passberry doesn't
The
develop
hero's
at all.
journey. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he pretty much remains the same up until like the last 30 minutes of the movie. And I'm like, there's no growth, no journey or anything. It's like it's pretty much future Barry, just talking to a wall. I mean, if anything, it was better if Barry didn't say anything and just let him, figure it out on his own, because he pretty much does the exact opposite of whatever he's trying to tell him.
That's true. That is true. That is shockingly true for what we got.
So I do want to bring this up because I've been dying to. How did you feel about Michael Keaton's Batman being introduced in this movie?
I think it was a mixed bag, right? So one, I mean, it was fun to see, Michael Keaton put on the bat suit again. That part was enjoyable. I kind of found it interesting, like him kind of being more and more of a recluse in this version,
which will make sense.
Yes, yeah, because he doesn't have the Justice League and he doesn't get to meet, all these people. So like, he kind of is in a different state. It kind of was jarring to me that, like, so we go in the past, but somehow Bruce Wayne got older, which was kind of really weird for me. And not to talk about, like, Flashpoint, I don't want to talk too much about the comics, but it made a lot more sense if, Keaton was the father, Thomas Wayne, as opposed to just being Bruce Wayne again. I thought that would have made a ton more sense. It would have made things more interesting. So I don't really understand why they went the route that they went to. I think it would have been a lot more interesting if you have him being the father, because we don't really know. We don't see a ton of Thomas Wayne, right? We never really get to know the father. He has a very brief thing. It would be interesting to see him going through the grief of losing, in theory, his wife and his son, and how he became recluse. And then, him be able to meet the Flash, and, this being maybe his first and only opportunity where he really got to be open again as an individual. Like, to me, that would have been a much more compelling story where, even though, yes, we're using Michael Keaton and we're not using him as Bruce Wayne, but in Thomas Wayne, but at least it, to me, would have made a lot more narrative sense. And I think it would have added something at least more memorable to talk about in the movie. Like, oh, wow, we actually got to see Thomas Wayne become Batman in this rendition of it. But instead, we just have some weird reason where we're like 10 plus years in the past, and we have a more older and decrepit Bruce Wayne in this version of it. And it just didn't really gel very well. Though I will give Michael Keaton some props for what he did in the movie.
Well, I mean, to be fair though, I mean, how many adaptations of Flashpoint, have used that model of Thomas Wayne as Batman? So at least from my standpoint, I feel like this was a nice departure, because you still have that Batman element in there, but you still have Bruce Wayne. So for me, I enjoyed it.
I will say this though, really quick though. So, but have we ever seen that done in a live action movie though?
That's true. That
would be my point, because you're absolutely right. Like, we've seen it happen a lot in like other variations, and there's a lot of animated stuff that I think does that job well. I think the only reason I would have liked that just a little bit differently was only because it would have been fun to see it in live action. So you're absolutely right though. I totally agree that we've seen it done a lot. It would have been fun to see it in live action. That's my only thing. So I'm sorry to cut you off, but
no, you're fine. You're fine. But I mean, another point too, because because in the CW, I mean, we do have that sequence where they meet an older Bruce Wayne who's pretty much a recluse, as portrayed by the late great Kevin Conroy. So to see Batman still, still active at his age, I thought was a pretty nice touch.
Yeah.
Now I will say this. That scene where they travel to Siberia, I got Black Widow vibes from that all over again. I was watching it and I was like, does anyone else like feel like this scene looks oddly familiar to you? Because they break into the facility to find presumably to find Kal-El, and instead they find Kar Zor-El, and they escape. And we have that very interesting sequence of Michael Keaton's Batman, doing what he does best, just flying around and kicking ass.
Yes.
But but I thought I thought it was interesting that that they made another twist because because in previous adaptations it was still Kal-El,
Yes.
but it but in this case they've made it Kara Zor-El. I want to get your take on that twist.
So I actually like that.
Okay.
So I thought it was interesting how they did it. And I think there's a few reasons why, right? And I think some of it came down to just the acting and the writing that they have for Supergirl, right?
Yeah.
And I think what kind of made it interesting was one, I wasn't expecting it, right? Which is always a good thing. So I think, to kind of like what I was talking about earlier with us seeing Batman, who somehow is older, even though we're 10 years in the past in this reality. Seeing Supergirl was an interesting way to kind of bring the character in. And
Yeah.
I think what I really enjoyed with it was we don't really know Supergirl. And I think something that they allowed Supergirl to do that we don't really see a lot with really any version of Superman was I really enjoyed the fact that like I felt her emotions a lot more. I think something with Superman that always ends up being a little bit of a turnoff from a storytelling perspective is
Mm-hmm.
he always feels extremely heroic. He's extremely stoic, like he's kind of the pinnacle of a hero. So with that, it's really hard to kind of get into it because he's just so good. It's hard to really grasp what it is that you're getting. But with Supergirl, it's a little bit different because she's going through the struggle, and I really like the part when when we kind of get over to fighting with Zod, like
Yeah.
you can feel the emotion and everything that she gets with that character. And to me, that was really cool to see. Like everyone wants to see like Superman get pissed off and fight with some anger. And I thought that that was cool with this was, when Zod tells him, oh, we, killed the Ifin or we killed Kal-El. I'm just like, holy shit, that's rough. And then to see her just like, just sit there and be like, you know what? Now I'm gonna hit you with my fist. That to me was interesting. It was fun to see that. I think my main takeaway or the thing I wasn't a huge fan of was for Supergirl, I like her decisions, like I got whiplash from them very quick.
Oh yeah,
Because
because the first she was like, "Yeah, I'm not going to help you guys." Bye.
exactly.
And then she comes back,
Exactly.
and then like 5 minutes later, she comes back and she's like, "I will help you fight Zod." I'm
Yep.
like,
It's just like
okay.
yeah, initially she's just like, you know what? Humanity has nothing going for it. Y'all a bunch of crazy, y'all a bunch of crazy people. And then 2 scenes later, it's like, you know what? Never mind. You know what, Barry? You're a good person. I guess I'll give humanity a break. And I'm like, I don't know if I could deal with this, like
Although
whiplash
to
of
be
humanity that Supergirl got right there.
although to be fair, I mean, she did spend quite a lot of time being abused and imprisoned by a bunch of nasty people. And at the same time, she is rescued by Bear because remember she does ask, she's like, well, why did you come back for me? You could have just left me in there. So I agree. It was a bit of a 1-2 punch in that regard, but at the same time, I'm like, but at the same time, I mean, she does get to see the two different sides of humanity, and she does get to decide for herself which version of humanity is more prominent, which one resonates more in her mind, because the act of kindness that Barry exhibits by rescuing her kind of sticks with her more than God. How long was it? Like 10 or 20 years she was in
Yeah,
prison. That Russian
decades.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, to me that was the part that I couldn't get behind. Like she literally like I don't, at least for myself, right? I can't say I could envision a scenario where decades I've been imprisoned by people and one act of kindness totally turns me around. That to me was just a little bit too unbelievable. Like if it was like maybe a shorter incident or something like that, I could maybe get behind. It seemed like she was really, really forgiving. And I think that was more of a writing thing than her actual character becoming more and more sympathetic to humanity.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Um, but but I really just want to like jump back a little bit. or just move back in time, as it were. How did you feel about how did you feel about Barry or setting up that well, what do you even call that? A trap or the scenario where past Barry gets his powers, but then he loses his powers.
uh weird. It's weird. I mean, I won't even try to fathom it because it's like, okay, does that make any sense that the bolt of lightning that gave him his powers the first line would take them away? I don't know how any of that works. It was a little bit weird. I also felt like didn't he explain to past Barry that he was getting struck by lightning, or did I miss that?
Yeah,
because like past Barry starts to like freak out. I'm like, weren't you kind of prepared for this? And like he's becoming a superhero. Like past Barry just once again kind of just shows you how obnoxious he is. Like I don't remember if it was actually discussed or not, but then it felt very weird that like he just kind of freaks out all of a sudden. It's just like, you know, my guy, like you're gonna get powers. Relax. Like he literally is not in jeopardy, but like he creates this pointless tension because he starts to freak out. And granted, like, yes, I would probably be a little bit drawn back if I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get struck by lightning. But if myself was like, don't worry, it happened to me, you'll be fine, I think I would get over it really quick. Like I would still be tense, but I'm not gonna sit there and overreact the way that he did.
Yeah, because it happens in a flash. So
exactly. Yeah. Like you literally know it's gonna happen. Like you've seen what happens, you know you have like, you know, super healing and stuff like that. Like it just felt very odd, like how that whole thing happened. And then to your point, I don't know how the lightning strike caused an opposite effect with the Flash. I don't know if that was a special bolt of lightning. So maybe in the comics, you know, it was like some type of special lightning that hit him.
It's the lightning of Shazam. Because I mean, apparently it's the lightning of Shazam that took his powers away.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, we get the speed of Herbie. So I mean, I don't get it, but you know, I guess that was a way. I guess from a storytelling perspective, at least it kind of gave him like a way to teach his past self to not be as annoying, but it came at the cost of just kind of being odd. So. Plus, he ends up just recreating it later to fix the problem. So it just kind of felt like a way to not have too many flashes on the screen at the same time.
Yeah, which then brings us to our next point about future Barry trying to recreate the incident, and obviously everybody's a little bit apprehensive about that. The thing that, and this goes back to what we talked about earlier about arrogance. I would figure that past Barry would be like, oh shit, I need to do everything I can to sabotage this because I want to be the only guy with with the speed power. Like, I'm going to become this guy eventually anyway. So why should he regain his powers when I can have it, all to myself? I figured, I thought if they had they incorporated that element into the story, I thought that would have made it a little bit more interesting because then it creates like a tension between the two Barrys, and it creates this sort of this eventual realization that yes, I have this power, and yes, I do realize that I now need to be a bit more responsible towards it. Sort of like this growth from this sort of selfish, the selfish attitude to being more selfless in the end. But I felt that was a missed mark on that one. That really, really stood out to me. What were your thoughts about the whole experiment thing of future Barry trying to become the Flash again?
You mean present Barry? Or yeah, I guess, well, sure. Well, present, future Barry. Yeah, I mean, I was fine with it because I didn't really, I guess for me, that didn't bother me at all. I think he kind of knew that he has a lot more experience as the Flash and he would be needed there. And I think, from a movie perspective, it'd be really weird if like the Flash that we pay attention to is sidelined during the final sequence there. So I really wasn't bothered by that. I think that past Barry kind of gets more of that kind of like ownership later on when they're fighting Zod, which I was okay with. So to me, I felt like they did enough with it that when, both of them are, using the Speed Force and trying to go back, I think that past Barry really had his time to kind of like shine and show that level of character arc that I was, at least one of the highlights of it was being able to see that part.
So I really did want to get your take on the whole battle with Zod thing, because because that
dumb.
Yeah, because for me, I felt like there were a lot, there was a lot that could have happened that would have been interesting, but it kind of fell flat on its face.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. One, I mean, it just felt very weird, like, to see Zod again. It just felt odd him being the villain, because, like, we're watching a movie called The Flash, and it's like, okay, we're trying to retcon, this the Zod attack, and I'm like, why? Like, you could have done something else. You could have, dealt with like the Anti-Flash. Like, I mean, there was.
Because I mean, you had the Dark Speedster right there. I thought that was the main villain.
Yes,
but
exactly.
But you only see him at the very beginning, and then you see him near the very end. I'm like, so what was he doing this entire time then?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I felt like a huge missed opportunity. It would have been a lot more interesting if they spin the narrative to be more around that, and maybe, the Dark Flash being a part of other big events that happen, and not just solely us focusing on Zod, because really, like, it's like, cool, so we've seen Zod before. He wasn't that great of a villain. And he has nothing to do with the Flash, so it just felt very awkward having it. I mean, I guess with Supergirl in it, it makes a little bit more sense from how they're trying to tell it, but it just felt odd having that be the villain. And, that's how a lot of our story is based upon, this character. And it's just like, did I care about Zod the first time? No. Am I going to care about him, with the minimal screen time that he gets the second time? Definitely not. I just made it that less interesting, and I just really could not get engaged the whole time with it.
Plus, I mean, if you think about it, they're Kryptonians, so they're so they're as fast, if not faster, than the Flash anyway.
Yes, that's true. That is very true.
I will say this. I mean, to your point, it was very interesting to see Kara Zor-El have her turn at trying to fight Zod, because we've already seen it the first time in Man of Steel.
Yes.
And the fact that Zod's like, oh yeah, we were trying to look for this matrix that will help us recreate Krypton. We had to kill the baby and we couldn't find it, but it's inside of you. And then that sets Kara off, and she goes to town on Zod and briefly gains the upper hand until he kills her and extracts the code from her blood. So what did you think about them trying to go back into the past to try to save Batman and Supergirl?
I like that. I thought that was well done, because they know they could go back on the past, and to me, that's what really kind of creates, I think, the best part of this was that last part, where I would totally believe that two guys that can literally go in the past and alter events, wanting to do anything that they could to help save everyone. That I really liked, and I thought that made a ton of sense, and I really like how the two of them kind of come to different conclusions, where the future Barry is realizing that no matter what they do, they can't find the success, whereas past Barry doesn't want to lose these people. He can't deal with the idea of the loss, and continues to kind of, do it over and over and over and over and over again, until we get to kind of this conclusion that the past Barry ends up becoming evil Barry, dark Barry, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So I actually really like that part of it. I do feel like maybe future Barry maybe gave up a little bit too quick. I think I would have liked to seen a few more attempts out of it. I realize there's it's already a 2.5 hour plus movie, so you can't dwell on it too much. It would have been nice to see that. It also kind of felt like Batman was just like, get me the hell out of this movie. Because like he seemed to be like, you know what? Don't worry about me. I was gonna die anyway. So I'm like, Batman, do you know what's going on with them going to the past and retrying this? Because you seem to want to give up really quick, like you were just living on a death sentence. So,
but I mean,
think,
but to be fair though, I mean they come to the realization that those two are going to die anyway. It's kind of like Groundhog's Day. It's like yeah,
yes.
you can keep resetting the timeline, but they're gonna end up dying in this particular place and time, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it seemed weird for me that Batman acted the way he did, because it's almost like he also knew that. And I'm like, I don't think Batman can know that. He's very smart. Well, you know that he's the world's greatest detective. I don't think he realizes that was Barry running into himself multiple times.
But to be fair, remember earlier he did explain how the multiverse works. So
sure.
So it's not too out of the ordinary for him to come to that realization, as odd as it seems, because I'm sure he's never had to experience before, and yet somehow he seems to know that the universe kind of fractures into like these little spaghetti noodle strands. I mean time streams.
I don't know. The spaghetti method is a pretty good way to explain it. So
that's true. But but to your point, I mean, yeah, because past Barry didn't have to go through the trauma of losing his mother, so so he doesn't have that level of maturity and that realization to kind of accept it. He kind of has to keep going to to save it, and doesn't realize that he's going to cause the multiverse to collapse in on itself, which I might add was kind of interesting to see all these cameos, because we did get to see a certain Nicolas Cage fighting a giant spider.
Nope. I can't do those things. It's just it feels so manipulative to the audience nowadays that we're seeing that. It just becomes so tiresome. Like, we've seen the multiverse so many times now, it totally does not register with me at all. Really, when I saw it, I was just like, okay, was that the 5th time I've seen the multiverse in as many years? Like, it just didn't jive with me at all. I didn't get into it. I didn't get invested with it. I was just like, oh, cool. Just another way for people to be like, oh, yeah, I remember that Batman. Or, I remember, seeing that. Or, oh, hey, that's funny to see. Funny to see Nicolas Cage as Superman, because, he was kind of went through and, donned the suit for a little bit, and there was test screenings with him in it. So it's like, oh, cool. If you know that, then you kind of get the in joke. And I was just like, I was totally tuned out from that. I'm like, you know what? I've seen it happen 100 times. It's just not interesting anymore. I was like, oh, cool. There's Adam West Batman. And I'm like, oh, cool. There's the CGI of, Christopher Reeve and Supergirl from the old Supergirl. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then afterwards, I was just like, out of my brain, because it's just not interesting anymore to see that. We've seen it done 1,000 times. And narratively speaking, it doesn't really do anything. I mean, we just have these weird, clashing, like they create these like weird, like spheres of, I guess, alternate realities that are crashing with that are, colliding with each other. And it did nothing for me. It literally did nothing. It just felt like another cheap way of the studio just trying to be like, eat some member berries and enjoy the past. And I'm like, you know what? It's cool when you do it with Michael Keaton because he's a part of the story. It feels cheap just to throw them on screen for some quick visual about it, when, we've seen that done so many times.
Because they almost had it, and then they ruined it by throwing that in there, basically.
Yeah, I mean, if it was just Michael Keaton, I'd be like, okay, that's cool, right? Like, it was fun to see him. To me, that's a good way of doing a cameo, right? Because, we know him, and he actually has, like, a character in the movie. Just seeing, like, a few images of, like, past ones, it just, like I said, it was cool in that moment, but just doesn't resonate at all. To me, totally uninteresting. After I saw it, I was like, cool, glad I saw it. That was cool. Doesn't mean anything to me afterwards with the movie, because it's just like, okay, I haven't seen that happen before in the Multiverse of Madness and
Spider-Man Far From Home.
and the Avengers and across
And
the Spider.
Loki,
Cool.
yeah.
Seen it. Okay, cool. What else are you actually doing that's creating? What are you actually doing as a movie that's making me care about the revival of the DCEU, right? And to me, it was a huge cop out.
So the DCU is not off to a good start then, if they're
No.
relying on Flashpoint.
Yeah, I would say absolutely not. Now, I will say this, right? Just to focus on the end of the movie now, right? Like after we saw everything in the Speed Force, to me, the last 10 minutes were about the best in the movie by far.
I agree.
I would say it was by far the best. I thought that past Barry coming to the realization that he had to let go. I thought that was great for his character arc. I think he kind of got the seed because we see past Barry kind of overhearing the conversation between Batman and Future Barry, where Future Barry admits that his parents his mother's been dead for a long time, dad going to prison probably for the rest of his life. So I thought it was interesting that I could feel past Barry really embodying that during the fight, because he realized what the stakes are now. Before, he didn't get it, now he gets it. And to me, that was really impactful. I really liked that. I thought that his sacrifice was really strong for the character. And I think Future Barry having kind of that nice cathartic moment with his mom at the end was really strong as well. I thought that was a very powerful scene. And as much as we kind of shit on a lot of the movie, I think this was really Ezra's time to shine, and I felt like this was the moment that it felt like everything came together. It's just a shame that we had to spend 2 hours to get to that moment.
And I agree with you. And yeah, I mean, those 2 hours were a bit of a head scratcher, but at the end, you kind of Barry comes to the realization that there are some things that shouldn't change because it makes us who we are. But it is comforting to see him try to have that last moment with his mother. I think it was the day before I think either it was the day before or the day of her death. And I'll do a little callback. It sort of reminds me of that scene in Endgame where Tony has that moment with his dad, and they both reconcile. You kind of feel like,
or Thor with his mom.
Yeah. I mean, it's that moment where they come to the realization that there's some things that they can't change, and they have to accept it. And who better to help them, come to that realization and accept it than their parents.
Yep. No. Excellent call out. Totally agree. I think that just unfortunately goes back to the same thing that we've seen it done before. I know that's obviously not a unique story to tell.
But I mean, but that particular trope kind of works. Unlike the multiverse, I think this particular one kind of lands on its feet most of the time.
Yes, I totally agree, and I think it's a little cheap because it's like, I mean, no one's like, oh man, I really hope Barry's mom dies. Like, I mean, obviously everyone's rooting for the success. Everyone wants to see him have a moment with his mom. I think it's kind of one of those things that it's so safe, it's hard to mess it up. But I don't want to take away from the performance, because I think Ezra does a very good job. I think when Ezra Miller plays Future Barry, through most of it, I thought he did well. Unfortunately, past Barry, when he plays past Barry, it feels like it really sucks down a lot of that performance, at least for me. But I think that a lot of that did come together at the end. So I think ultimately it did have, at least that was my one big positive, was him being able to deal with that and him having that moment.
Now, I did like the fact that he did change the footage a little bit just so his dad looked up at the camera. So I thought,
I'm gonna say this, right? So I have mixed feelings about that, because we literally spent a whole movie showing how making changes causes issues, and then Flash still makes that change. And I get, like, I get that we want to have that nice moment where he's able to, at least be able to get his dad back after everything he went through. But I
Yeah.
will say, from like just thinking about it from a story perspective, it felt so odd to see him once again making an alteration, knowing that it could cause absolutely crazy things to happen.
Yeah. It kind of makes you wonder, what did he do to make him look up, though?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Like I was heading home and I'm like, did he like yell out his name or something? And he looked up,
Yeah.
or what? But
Yeah.
so so to wrap things up, I mean, what's your overall score for this movie?
All right. So I'm going to give it 2.5 disappointed flashes out of 5.
Okay.
I think that it was average to below average. I guess with the 2, I guess I have to say it's below average. Maybe 2.5. I don't know. I suck at grading things like that. But it felt very average. I thought there was just so much of it that didn't work, that while the ending, I think, sealed a lot of the positivities for me, I can't overlook the rest of the movie. I think it was just too inconsistent. Michael Keaton's Batman was just really inconsistent. Even though I like Supergirl a bit, it just felt inconsistent. Some of Barry's stuff is inconsistent. There was just too many inconsistencies throughout, where I just feel like from the storytelling, the characters flip-flopping really easily, it just didn't really resonate with me. So I'm gonna give it, like I said, two disappointing berries out of 5. It didn't stick with me.
Or well, I'll probably give it maybe a 2.1 disappointing flashes.
Wow.
And the reason for why is this, and it's probably obvious. I thought Michael Keaton's Batman did a pretty good job, all things considered, given what he had to deal with. I mean, and mind you, I grew up watching watching Tim Burton's Batman. So for me, I felt that was one of the few things that kind of kept this movie afloat, because otherwise it would have just sunk.
Yes.
The runtime, I felt, was completely unnecessary, because there were just so many there were just so many missed opportunities. It was like, why even bother with it? They start off on something great and then they just forget about it. I'll agree with you. The ending was pretty moving, and I thought, yeah, it is pretty. I mean, it is pretty cliched, but it's one of those cliches that work, unlike the multiverse, which I felt, again, to your point, has been done so many times. It pretty much just needs to stop. They just need to come up with something else at that point.
Yes. Yeah.
The biggest sticking point for me was the fact that Ezra Miller decided, what's the best way to make my past self different from my current self? I know, I'll just make him a total dumbass. And I felt there were just so many ways he could have approached it, have a more nuanced approach to it. But no, he just went the lazy route and just decided to make his younger self be a complete idiot. An unbelievable idiot of a teenager. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's more of a writing and not Ezra Miller's choice. I don't know, I don't know if you read anything like that, but to me, that's more of a writing fault than I'm going to blame Ezra for, at least in that regard.
Well, I'll say this. Like, I'm incorporating Ezra Miller into this mix because yeah, I mean, a large chunk of it was due to the writing. You can also attribute it to the directing as well, but I kind of felt like he could have made a few creative choices to where he was like, you know what, yeah, maybe I'll make him dumb, but maybe I'll just try to put a little bit of arrogance in there to make it more believable. That's just me.
Fair.
On
yeah,
that.
No, that's very fair. I'd agree with that. Yeah.
So are there any additional things you wanted to add before we sign off on this?
No, I think we wrapped up really well. I just I don't know what's gonna happen with the DCEU now. I mean, this thing is, what was this, like week 2 right now, right?
Yeah,
we're going into week 2, and it's totally bombing. So I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm gonna be very curious to see what they want to do. I guess one thing I will say that we did George Clooney at the end.
Oh yeah.
That was kind of like, oh, ha ha ha, like another Batman. Like, okay, I guess that kind of sticks. And they got the one use of the effort at the end there, and I'm like, okay, that was, I guess, kind of amusing to end on, but just kind of once again kind of throws more uncertainty in this because you're trying to rekindle this. And, number one, the movie that you're rekindling, kind of flops hard. You have all the stuff with Ezra Miller just offset that has all these issues, and, kind of you backed him up on this. And I think a lot of the backup was because, like, oh, this is going to be such a good movie. It's going to be worth it. Like, he gives the performance of a lifetime. And then when you see it, it's just like, no, this was not it. This is not it. So, I don't know what they're gonna do. I guess we'll have to see what the future holds for it. But right now, that DC
that's the DCU.
Universe, it is looking very shaky right now. So I hope whatever they have planned, they better rock it out because they're in jeopardy of this sinking really fast.
Well, I mean, an interesting note is that the guy who directed The Flash, he's been tagged to direct the next Batman movie. What was it? Batman. It's the one that James Gunn went on about Batman meets his son Damian, and Damian becomes the new Robin, and there's sort of like conflict of Batman trying to teach Damian how to not be a jerk, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So
Damian is always portrayed as being a little bit of an asshole, so that makes sense.
Yeah. So, but for a big franchise character like Batman, I mean, you got to knock it out of the park on that one.
Totally agree.
Because it's so easy to just screw things up. All right. Well, next week, we don't have a new episode coming next week, but I did edit and record the test run that we did weeks earlier, so that will be out. And then the next movie we'll probably do a review on is Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. I'm guessing.
I'm game for that.
And then after that, we've got Christopher Nolan's latest release of Oppenheimer, so that should be an interesting thing to look out for. And if there are any other trailers that come out, we will do our best to do a review. And guys, if you have any movies or any TV shows that you want us to take a look at, please put them down in the comments below and we'll take a look and we will do our best to accommodate that. But thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and take it easy. Ciao.
Peace.